A mother canine dog gives birth, but then the vet notices something's terribly wrong. What should be a joyful moment turns into a nightmare discovery. Hidden inside this loyal police dog's body is a secret no one was supposed to find. The people sworn to protect her may be the very ones putting her in danger. Suddenly, saving this mother and her newborn pups isn't just about medicine. It's about survival. Because behind this delivery lies a dark scheme, powerful enemies, and a truth that could shatter everything. What was done to this dog? And when the truth comes out, who will stop at nothing to silence it? Drop a comment below and share which part of the world you're tuning in from today. If you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe for more thunder. Cracked across the midnight sky is Dr. Linnea, heart jolted awake at her desk to the sound of urgent pounding on the clinic's front door. Rain pelted against the windows of her small veterinary practice, and the wind howled through the trees outside. She quickly pushed aside the patient charts she'd fallen asleep reviewing and hurried to answer. Through the glass door, she could make out the broad-shouldered figure of Deputy Calder Price, rain dripping from his uniform as he cradled something large and dark in his arms. Her heart skipped a beat when she recognized Sable, the department's prized German Shepherd K9 officer, Dr. Hart. Calder's voice was tight with worry as she unlocked the door. Sable went into labor about an hour ago. Something's not right. Linnea held the door wide, ushering them into the warm light of the waiting room. Bring her straight to exam room 1, she directed, already switching into emergency mode. Her tired mind cleared as adrenaline kicked in. Tell me what's happening. Calder carefully laid Sable on the examination table, his usually stern expression softened with concern for his four-legged partner. The German Shepherd's sides heaved with labored breathing, her dark eyes wide with distress. She started having contractions earlier this evening, but they seemed normal at first. Then about 20 minutes ago, she got really restless and started whining. I just had this feeling. Linnea pulled on exam gloves and began gently palpating Sable's swollen abdomen. The dog trusted her touch. She'd been Sable's vet since the department first brought her on as a rookie canine officer 3 years ago. You did the right thing bringing her in. Let's see what's going on with these puppies. Working quickly but carefully, Linnea performed an examination while speaking softly to soothe the anxious mother-to-be. Good girl, Sable. Such a good girl. She glanced up at Calder, who hovered nearby. Can you grab those towels from the cabinet? We're going to need them soon. The next hour passed in a blur of controlled intensity as Linnea helped Sable deliver her puppies one by one. The first 4 came relatively easily, tiny black and tan bundles that squirmed and squeaked as Linnea cleared their airways and helped them take their first breaths. Calder proved to be an excellent assistant, keeping careful count and helping to dry each newborn. The 5th puppy arrived just as the storm outside reached its peak, thunder shaking the clinic's windows. But something still didn't feel right to Linnea. Her experienced hands told her Sable's ordeal wasn't over. That's 5 healthy puppies, Calder said with relief, watching the newest arrival nurse alongside its siblings. She did great, Linnea frowned, counting again in her head. Wait! She moved to check her surgical tray, where she'd been placing each placenta after delivery. We only have 4 afterbirths here. There should be 1 for each puppy. Calder's face creased with worry. What does that mean? It means we're not done. Linnea quickly rechecked Sable's vital signs, noting the dog's increasing distress. There's retained placental tissue, possibly from a 6th puppy we haven't seen yet. This could turn dangerous very quickly. She made a fast decision. We need to get her into surgery right now. Surgery? Calder's voice rose slightly. Is it that serious? If we don't remove the retained tissue, she could develop a life-threatening infection. Linnea was already gathering supplies and medications. I need your help. Can you stay? He nodded without hesitation. Whatever you need. Good. Help me move her to the surgical suite while she's... Still stable enough to walk, they carefully guided Sable down the hallway to the small surgery room, leaving the puppies safely nestled in warm blankets under a heat lamp. Linnea worked quickly to insert in 4 catheter and begin administering anesthesia while Calder helped position Sable on the surgical table. "I'll need to perform an exploratory laparotomy," Linnea explained as she prepped the surgical site. "It's the only way to find and remove whatever's trapped in there." She glanced up at Calder's worried face. "She's strong and healthy. She has excellent chances with early intervention like this." The surgery began smoothly enough. Linnea's skilled hands made precise incisions, working her way systematically through layers of tissue. But what she found when she reached Sable's uterus made her blood run cold. "This isn't right," she muttered, leaning closer under the surgical lights. "What is it?" Calder stepped closer, concern evident in his voice. "There's scarring here, recent scarring." Linnea carefully examined the tissue. "And these suture marks, someone's operated on her before, but these aren't from her space surgery years ago. These are much more recent." As she continued her exploration, her fingers encountered something hard and completely foreign. "Oh my God!" Her heart began to pound as she carefully extracted what appeared to be a small plastic capsule, followed by another and another. They had been carefully stitched along one of Sable's uterine horns. "What are those?" Calder's voice was barely above a whisper. "I don't know exactly, but they were deliberately implanted." Linnea's mind raced as she worked to safely remove each capsule while keeping Sable stable. "Someone performed unauthorized surgery on your canine officer and used her as some kind of carrier." The implications hung heavy in the air between them. Linnea could see the shock and anger warring on Calder's face as he processed what this meant. "We need to document everything," she said firmly, already thinking ahead. "Hand me my phone from that counter. I need to photograph these in situ before I remove any more." She carefully photographed each step of the extraction, making sure to capture clear images of the capsule's placement and the surgical scarring. As she worked, she could feel Calder's growing agitation. "I have to call this in," he said finally, running a hand through his hair. "Captain Hollis needs to know about this immediately." Linnea paused in her work, choosing her words carefully. "Calder, think about what we're looking at here. Someone had access to a police K9 and performed illegal surgery to implant foreign objects inside her. This goes beyond a simple department matter. That's exactly why the captain needs to be notified," Calder insisted, though she could hear a note of uncertainty in his voice. "I think we need to contact state authorities directly," Linnea countered, continuing to work as she spoke. "This is evidence of a serious crime, one that required inside access to your department. We need to make sure it's handled properly from the start." She finished removing the last capsule and began the delicate work of repairing the damage to Sable's tissues. "Right now, our priority is saving Sable and preserving this evidence. Once I'm finished here, I'm going to document everything thoroughly and secure these capsules in my safe. Then we can discuss next steps." Calder was silent for a long moment, watching as she worked. Finally, he nodded slowly. "You're right. We need to handle this carefully." He looked down at Sable's unconscious form. "I can't believe someone would do this to her." Linnea focused on placing her sutures with precise care, her mind already planning the detailed medical report she would write. "People can be cruel, but they can also be brought to justice. We just have to make sure we do this right." The surgery took another hour to complete. By the time Linnea was closing the final layer, exhaustion was beginning to creep in around the edges of her concentration. But she couldn't rest yet. There was too much at stake. After moving Sable to recovery and checking that she and all 5 puppies were stable, Linnea carefully cleaned and preserved each capsule as evidence. She photographed them again, including detailed shots of their measurements and any identifying marks. Her hands shook slightly as she sealed them in sterile containers and locked them in her office safe. Calder watched the whole process, his usual confident demeanor shaken. What do you think was in them? I'm not sure, Linnea admitted, sitting heavily in her desk chair. But given the elaborate lengths someone went to in order to conceal them this way. She let the implication hang in the air. She pulled out a fresh notepad and began documenting everything. The time Sable arrived, each step of the delivery, the discovery during surgery, every detail she could remember. Her handwriting was cramped but clear as she filled page after page. Someone's going to try to make this disappear, she said finally, looking up at Calder. You know that, right? He nodded grimly. Yeah, I'm starting to understand that. He squared his shoulders, and she could see him making a decision. But I won't let them. Sable trusts us, trusts me. Someone took advantage of that trust, used her like she was nothing but a tool. They have to be held accountable. Linnea felt a surge of respect for the deputy. It couldn't be easy for him to face the possibility of corruption within his own department. We'll figure this out, she assured him. But first, we need to make sure Sable and her puppies are safe and recovering well. They spent the next hour monitoring their patients. Sable was coming out of anesthesia smoothly, and all 5 puppies were nursing whenever their mother was alert enough. Despite everything else going on, Linnea couldn't help but smile at the sight. The storm had passed by the time she finished her documentation, leaving behind a heavy silence broken only by the occasional whimper from one of the puppies. Dawn wasn't far off, but Linnea knew sleep would be impossible now. There was too much at stake, too many decisions to be made. She looked at her safe, knowing the evidence it contained could shake the entire department. Then she looked at Sable, peacefully nursing her puppies, blissfully unaware of how she'd been used. Linnea straightened her shoulders, determined. Whatever came next, she would make sure justice was served for Sable and for anyone else who might have been hurt by this scheme. The quiet of the early morning was shattered by the sound of tires crunching on gravel outside the clinic. Linnea glanced at the clock, 4:30 in the morning. Through the window, she saw headlights cutting through the lingering darkness, bright and aggressive. A car door slammed. Heavy footsteps approached the clinic entrance. The door burst open, and Captain Breck Hollis filled the doorframe, his bulk made more imposing by his dark uniform and the scowl etched across his face. His cold eyes swept the room, taking in Linnea at her desk, Calder standing near Sable's recovery kennel, and the mother dog herself with her nursing puppies. Price, Hollis barked. Report, Calder straightened instinctively. Sir, during the emergency C-section for Sable, Dr. Hart discovered. I know what she found, Hollis cut him off. His attention fixed on Linnea. Where are they? Linnea met his gaze steadily. The items recovered during surgery are secured according to proper evidence protocols. There will be no evidence protocols. Hollis's voice was flat. This is an internal department matter. You will hand over everything you removed from the dog, and you will document nothing. Is that clear? The room temperature seemed to drop several degrees. Linnea could feel her heart pounding, but her voice remained calm and professional. I'm sorry, Captain Hollis, but I can't do that. As a licensed veterinarian, I have ethical and legal obligations. What I found during surgery requires proper documentation and chain of custody procedures. This isn't a request. Doctor, Hollis took a step closer to her desk. This is a direct order from the head of the K-9 unit. Those items are department property. No, Linnea said firmly. They're evidence of a crime. Someone surgically implanted foreign objects in a police service animal without proper medical authorization. That's animal abuse at minimum, possibly much worse depending on what's in those capsules. She could see Calder in her peripheral vision, his posture tense. The deputy's gaze flickered between her and his captain, loyalty warring with the truth of what he'd witnessed. The department will handle its own investigation, Hollis insisted. His voice dropped lower, threatening. Don't make this difficult, Dr. Hart. Your clinic depends on its contract with the department, doesn't it? Linnea stood up from her desk, drawing herself to her full height. "Are you threatening me, Captain? I'm reminding you of reality. Now where are they?" Instead of answering, Linnea picked up her camera. "I need to document Sable's condition again." Standard post-operative monitoring. She began taking photos of the incision site, the nursing puppies, making sure each shot was clear and properly time-stamped. "What do you think you're doing?" Hollis demanded. "My job." Linnea continued photographing, her movements deliberate and controlled. Deputy Price can confirm that all proper medical protocols are being followed. Calder shifted his weight, and Linnea held her breath. This was the moment. He would either back Hollis's demands or ... "She's right, sir," Calder said quietly. "We need to do this by the book." Hollis's head snapped toward his deputy. "Excuse me?" "Someone hurt Sable," Calder continued, his voice growing stronger. "Used her like she was nothing but a smuggling tool." "That's not right, sir. We owe her better than that." "You're out of line, Price." "No, sir. For the first time in a while, I think I'm exactly where I need to be." Calder moved to stand between Hollis and Sable's kennel. "The doctor's following proper procedures, and Sable needs to stay here under observation. She just had major surgery." While they argued, Linnea carefully typed out a message on her phone to a state investigator she knew from previous abuse cases. Her fingers moved swiftly but quietly over the screen. "Urgent. Evidence of criminal activity discovered during emergency surgery on K-9 officer. Possible corruption. Need immediate assistance." Hollis's face had grown red with anger. "This is insubordination. Both of you will face consequences. I'll have the veterinary board reviewing every decision you've ever made. Dr. Hart and Price, you can kiss your career goodbye. Are you finished?" Linnea asked calmly, setting down her camera. "Because I need to prepare samples for toxicology screening, and Sable needs her next round of medications." Hollis stood there for a long moment, rage radiating from him in almost visible waves. Finally he spat out, "This isn't over. Not by a long shot. Expect official complaints to be filed by morning. And when oversight reviews your contract, don't expect any sympathy." He turned on his heel and stormed out. The door slammed behind him hard enough to rattle the windows. In the sudden quiet, one of the puppies gave a startled whimper, and Sable lifted her head to check on her litter. Linnea let out a shaky breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Her hands trembled slightly as she began preparing the samples for testing, carefully labeling each one. "You okay?" Calder asked softly. She nodded. "Are you?" That couldn't have been easy. "No," he admitted. But it was right. He moved to the clinic's front door, taking up a position where he could watch both the parking lot and the recovery area. "I'll keep watch while you work, just in case he comes back." "Thank you." Linnea managed a small smile. "For everything." She turned back to her work, methodically preparing the samples while keeping one eye on Sable and her puppies. The line had been drawn tonight, between right and wrong, between loyalty to power and loyalty to truth. There would be consequences, she knew that. But watching Sable tenderly cleaning one of her pups, Linnea knew she wouldn't have chosen differently. The night settled into a watchful quiet. While Calder stood guard at the door, Linnea finished processing the samples for toxicology screening. She double-checked all her documentation, made copies of everything, and secured them in multiple locations. Whatever happened next, the evidence would be preserved. Linnea stared at the toxicology report on her computer screen, her heart pounding. After 3 days of anxious waiting, the results had finally arrived. Her hands trembled as she read through the detailed chemical analysis. The capsules she'd discovered inside Sable contained precursor chemicals for fentanyl, carefully sealed in dissolving bags designed to break down during the birthing process. "Oh, Sable," she whispered, looking over at the German shepherd resting with her puppies. "What did they do to you?" She picked up her phone to call Calder, who'd been checking in regularly since that confrontational night. He answered on the first ring. "I've got the tox results," Linnea said without preamble. "You need to see this." 20 minutes later, Calder's patrol car pulled up outside the clinic. His face was tight with concern as he walked in. "What did you find?" Linnea turned her computer screen so he could see. The capsules contained fentanyl precursors, chemicals used to manufacture the drug. They were in special solvent bags designed to dissolve during birth. They were using Sable as a living drug courier. Calder's face went pale. "Dear God." He sank into a chair, running a hand over his face. "They operated on her, put those things inside her, just to smuggle drugs?" "That's not all," Linnea said grimly. She pulled up another set of results. "I scanned the puppies for microchips yesterday, standard procedure before they go to their new homes. But the chips I found aren't registered through any legitimate system. The data trail leads to a private kennel outside the county." She watched as Calder absorbed this information, seeing the horror dawn in his eyes as he realized the implications. "A pipeline," he said slowly. "They're not just using Sable, they're breeding dogs specifically for this." Linnea nodded. "I did some digging into the kennel's financials. Most of their funding comes through shell companies, but I managed to trace it back to Silas Merritt, the trucking magnate." Calder's voice cracked. "He's one of our biggest supporters. His company donates thousands of dollars to the K9 unit every year." "The perfect cover," Linnea said softly. Who would question police dogs being transported in his trucks? Or regular visits to a kennel that supplies K9 units? Calder stood up abruptly and began pacing the small office. "This is bigger than just corruption in the department. They've built an entire infrastructure around this. Breeding, surgery, transport. Using law enforcement work as cover." He stopped, looking sick. "How many other dogs? How many other departments?" Linnea was already typing on her computer. "I'm making copies of everything, the tox reports, the chip data, the financial records. We need backups in case they try to suppress the evidence." She inserted a flash drive, then another. "I'm sending copies to secure cloud storage too. They'll come after you," Calder said. "Once this gets out, I know." Linnea's voice was steady despite her fear. "That's why we need help. Official protection. This is too big for us to handle alone." A whimper from the recovery area drew their attention. Sable had raised her head, ears pricked forward alertly. Through the window, they could see a black SUV pulling into the parking lot. "Expecting anyone?" Calder asked, his hand moving to his weapon. "No." Linnea quickly pressed the final key to upload her files. "No appointments until this afternoon." The SUV's door opened, and a tall man in expensive rancher-style suit stepped out. Even from inside, they could see his silver mustache catching the morning sun. "Silas Merritt," Calder breathed. How did he know? Someone must have tipped him off about the tox results. Linnea's fingers flew over her keyboard, sending one last encrypted email to her contact at the State Investigation Bureau. "We need those allies now." "Stay here," Calder said, moving toward the door. "Let me handle this." But before he reached it, two more vehicles pulled in, unmarked sedans with tinted windows. Men in dark suits emerged, their bearing unmistakably law enforcement. "Federal agents," Calder said, relief evident in his voice. "Your messages got through." Linnea sagged slightly in her chair. "Thank God." They watched as the agents intercepted Merritt before he could reach the clinic door. His face darkened with anger as one agent displayed a badge while another began reading from an official document. Inside the clinic, Sable had settled back down with her puppies, seemingly satisfied that her humans had the situation under control. Linnea looked at the mother dog and her litter, thinking of how many other dogs might have been used in this scheme. How many might still be suffering? "It's not over," she said quietly. "This is just the beginning." Calder nodded, his expression grim but determined. "But at least now we're not fighting alone." Through the window, they could see Merritt arguing with the agents, his face growing redder by the moment. More vehicles were arriving, state police forensics teams, even a mobile evidence collection unit. Linnea began gathering her documentation into organized files. She knew there would be hours of interviews ahead, statements to give, evidence to present. The full scope of the operation was still unclear, but at least now they had the resources to uncover it. "I'll need to examine all the dogs from that kennel," she said. "There could be others like Sable." "I'll help," Calder replied. "Whatever you need." He paused, looking troubled. "I should have seen it sooner. All those training visits to Merritt's kennel, the special transport arrangements, ... You saw it when it mattered," Linnea assured him. "You stood up for what was right." Outside, the agents were leading Merritt toward one of their vehicles. His face was a mask of cold fury as he glanced toward the clinic windows. Linnea met his gaze steadily, refusing to look away. For the first time in days, she felt like they might actually succeed in exposing the truth. The evidence was secure, authorities were involved, and most importantly, Sable and her puppies were safe. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The morning sun streamed through the windows, warming the recovery area where Sable dozed with her pups. In the parking lot, investigators moved purposefully between vehicles, coordinating their efforts. The initial shock of discovery was giving way to the methodical work of building a case. Linnea began printing copies of her files for the investigators. Each page represented another piece of evidence, another link in the chain that would hopefully bring down this entire operation. The printer hummed steadily as Calder helped her organize the documents into clear, chronological order. "They'll want to interview everyone who had access to the K9 unit," he said. "Training officers, handlers, support staff. Some of them must have known, and some of them must be innocent," Linnea added. "Like you were," he nodded grimly. "Either way, the unit's going to be torn apart by this. Better that than letting it continue," she said firmly. "Think of how many dogs they've hurt. How many more they would have used if we hadn't caught them." A sharp knock at the door made them both jump. But it was just one of the federal agents, badge displayed, requesting to begin their official statements. As Linnea gathered her evidence and prepared to walk them through her discovery, she felt a mixture of relief and determination. The truth was out now, and there would be no going back. The comfortable fiction of a respected business leader supporting law enforcement had been shattered, revealing the dark reality of exploitation and criminal enterprise beneath. But with that revelation came the chance to make things right, for Sable, for all the dogs who had been used, and for the integrity of law enforcement itself. The morning sun cast long shadows across Linnea's clinic parking lot as she watched her neighbor Nicolette Parr's pickup truck roll to a stop. The retired EM8 stepped out, her weathered face creased with concern. Nicolette had always been direct and practical, exactly what Linnea needed right now. "You sounded worried on the phone," Nicolette said, walking up to meet Linnea at the clinic side entrance. "What's going on?" Linnea glanced around before ushering her inside. "I need your help, NIC. Something big is happening, and I don't think I can handle it alone anymore." Inside the treatment room, Sable lay curled around her 5 nursing puppies. The German shepherd's dark eyes tracked their movement, but she remained calm, recognizing Linnea's presence as safe. "Remember that emergency C-section 3 nights ago?" Linnea asked, closing the door behind them. "Well, I found something during the surgery. Something that wasn't supposed to be there." Over the next 30 minutes, Linnea explained everything: the hidden capsules, the toxicology results, the connection to Merritt's kennel, and Captain Hollis's threatening behavior. Nicolette listened intently, her EMT training evident in the way she processed the information with calm efficiency. "So you need backup," Nicolette stated matter-of-factly when Linnea finished. "Someone to help keep watch and handle logistics while you work with the state investigator." "Exactly," Linnea said, relief flooding through her that Nicolette understood immediately. "I can't leave Sable and the puppies unprotected. And I need someone I can trust absolutely. Nicolette's expression hardened. Count me in. 20 years as an EMT taught me plenty about handling emergencies and keeping my mouth shut. When do we start? Right now, Linnea said, pulling out her laptop. The state investigator, Agent Chun, is already working on accessing the kennel's breeding records. We need to create a timeline of everything we can find: past litters, vet visits, transport dates. Something in those records has to show a pattern. They set up a makeshift command center in Linnea's office. Nicolette proved invaluable. Her experience with emergency documentation, helping them organize the growing mountain of information. She took charge of monitoring the clinic's security cameras while Linnea coordinated with Agent Chunda throughout the day. Bits and pieces of the puzzle began falling into place. The investigators' preliminary audit revealed suspicious gaps in the kennel's breeding records. Several dogs, including Sable, had multiple documented pregnancies with incomplete medical histories. "Look at this," Linnea said, pointing to her screen. Sable's previous litter was born 6 months ago, but there's no record of standard post-whelping care. No vaccine updates, no puppy checks, nothing. Nicolette leaned in, frowning. "And the transport dates?" "That's where it gets interesting," Linnea replied. "Every time there was a birth, there's a corresponding transport record within 48 hours. Always to one of Merritt's distribution centers." The retired EMT's eyes narrowed. "They weren't just moving puppies, were they?" "No," Linnea confirmed grimly. "They were moving drugs, using the mothers as carriers. The timing had to be perfect. The capsules would dissolve during birth, ready for collection and transport before anyone could notice." Deputy Calder Price arrived in the afternoon, his face tight with worry. "You need to know something," he said without preamble. "Hollis just filed a formal complaint against you with the State Veterinary Board." Linnea's stomach dropped, but she'd been expecting this. "What are the charges?" "Unauthorized surgery and evidence mishandling," Calder replied, his voice bitter. "He's trying to get your license suspended. Claims you performed unnecessary procedures on Sable and contaminated potential evidence. He's trying to discredit everything I found," Linnea said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "If I lose my license, all my documentation becomes suspect." Nicolette stepped forward, her presence solid and reassuring. "Then we make sure everything is backed up and verified. Multiple copies, multiple locations, multiple witnesses." Calder nodded, pulling out a thick folder. "I've been going through our unit's personnel records. Every time Hollis signed off on a canine transport, every training session he supervised at Merritt's kennel. We're building our own timeline." They worked late into the evening, mapping connections and cross-referencing dates. Agent Chun called twice more, confirming that her team was making progress in accessing the kennel's full records. Every piece of evidence they uncovered pointed to a sophisticated operation that had been running for years. As night fell, Nicolette insisted on taking the first watch shift. "You need rest," she told Linnea firmly. "I'll keep an eye on things here." Already set up a cot in the break room. Linnea wanted to protest, but exhaustion was catching up with her. "Wake me if anything changes." "Sable needs her meds at 10 o'clock. "Got it covered," Nicolette assured her. "Go sleep. We've got your back." Before heading to the break room, Linnea checked on Sable one last time. The German Shepherd was alert but relaxed, her puppy sleeping peacefully against her side. Looking at them, Linnea felt a fierce surge of protectiveness. Hollis and his threats couldn't change the truth of what she'd discovered. No matter what pressure they applied, she wouldn't back down. Calder lingered in the doorway, watching her with concern. "You know this is just the beginning, right? Hollis won't stop with just a license complaint." "I know," Linnea said quietly. "But we have something he doesn't." "What's that?" "The truth," she replied, meeting his eyes steadily. "And people willing to fight for it." Calder's expression softened with determination. "I've spent too long looking the other way." Whatever happens next, I'm in this with you. Through the window, they could see Nicolette making her rounds, checking locks and security cameras with military precision. Inside the clinic, Sable dozed with her puppies, living evidence of a crime that could no longer stay hidden. The complaint against her license was just the first counterattack, Linnea knew. But with Nicolette's steady support, Calder's dedication to the truth, and Agent Chun's official investigation gaining momentum, they had a fighting chance. The small team they'd assembled might be exactly what they needed to expose the corruption that had taken root in their community. As she finally lay down on the break room cot, Linnea could hear Nicolette's quiet footsteps patrolling the hallway. The sound was oddly comforting, a reminder that she wasn't alone in this fight anymore. Whatever Hollis and his allies threw at them next, they would face it together. The night settled around the clinic, quiet but charged with purpose. In her treatment room, Sable slept peacefully with her pups, unaware of the storm brewing around them. But thanks to her, thanks to one unexpected discovery during an emergency surgery, the truth was finally coming to light. And Linnea was determined to see it through, no matter the cost. The acrid smell of smoke jolted Linnea awake. She sat up in her office cot, heart pounding, as orange flames licked beneath her door. The clinic's fire alarm screamed through the halls. Fire! Linnea grabbed her phone, punching in 911 while racing to the kennel area. Thick smoke rolled along the ceiling. Through watering eyes, she could see Sable and her pups in their recovery pen. The mother dog already on her feet, barking frantically. The front door burst open. Calder rushed in, still in his deputy uniform. "Linnea, where are you?" "Back here," she called, coughing. "Help me with the puppies." They reached the kennel together as flames devoured the exam room next door. The heat pressed against them like a physical wall. Sable whined, nosing her 5 pups who squealed in terror. "Take 2, I'll grab 3, Linnea commanded. They scooped up the squirming puppies, tucking them against their chests. "Sable, come." The German shepherd followed them toward the exit, but a thunderous crack split the air. A burning ceiling beam crashed down, pinning Sable's hindquarters. The dog yelped in pain and fear. "No." Linnea passed her puppies to Calder. "Get them out. I'll come back for Sable." "Linnea, wait," but she was already pushing him toward the door. The smoke grew thicker by the second. Linnea dropped to her knees beside Sable, who whimpered and licked her hand. "Hold on, girl. Hold on." Strong hands gripped her shoulders. Nicolette's voice cut through the roar of flames. "I've got your back. On 3. Together, they heaved at the heavy beam. Sweat poured down their faces as they strained. Sable thrashed, trying to help free herself. "One more time." Nicolette braced her feet. 1.2.3. With a final surge of desperate strength, they lifted the beam just enough. Sable scrambled out, limping but mobile. Linnea grabbed her collar, and they stumbled toward the exit. The heat was unbearable now. Linnea's lungs burned with every breath. They were almost to the door when an ominous groan filled the building. "Run!" Nicolette shoved them forward. They burst into the cool night air seconds before the roof collapsed with a deafening crash. The force knocked them to their knees on the gravel parking lot. Behind them, the clinic became an inferno. Calder had the puppies safe in his patrol car, wrapped in emergency blankets. He helped them up as fire engine sirens wailed in the distance. "Are you all right?" Linnea nodded, unable to speak through her coughing. She kept one hand buried in Sable's fur, reassuring herself the dog was really there. Nicolette supported her other side as they watched flames consume the building. "This was no accident," Nicolette said grimly. "They're trying to destroy your evidence." "The physical samples were in the fireproof safe," Linnea managed hoarsely. "But all my files, my backup documentation, ... They're sending a message," Calder said, his jaw tight. "They're willing to kill to cover this up, the animals, anyone who gets in their way." Red and blue lights flooded the parking lot as fire trucks and more patrol cars arrived. The firefighters deployed their hoses, but it was clear the clinic was already a total loss. Everything Linnea had built over the years, reduced to ash and rubble. She straightened her shoulders, anger burning hotter than the flames. They didn't get what they wanted. Sable and her pups are alive. There are living proof. You can't stay here, Nicolette said. None of you are safe, Calder nodded. I know a place. An old hunting cabin my grandfather left me. It's remote, defensible, and not in my official records. I'll help set up medical supplies, Nicolette offered. Between my immediate experience and Linnea's expertise, we can monitor the dogs there. Linnea watched as chunks of her clinic's roof caved in, sending sparks spiraling into the night sky. The state investigator would need to accelerate the case now. Their opponents had shown how far they would go, burning down her life's work to erase the evidence of their crimes, but they had underestimated her determination. Sable pressed against her leg, and one of the puppies whimpered from the car. These innocent lives were depending on her. She wouldn't let them down. Let's move quickly, she said. Before whoever did this realizes they failed. They worked fast in the chaos of emergency vehicles and onlookers. While the firefighters battled the blaze, they loaded the dogs and essential supplies into their vehicles. Linnea took one last look at the burning building where she had helped so many animals over the years. The sight strengthened her resolve. These people had taken her clinic, but they hadn't taken what mattered most, the living proof of their crimes, and the determination of 3 people to bring them to justice, no matter the cost. In a convoy of 3 vehicles, they slipped away into the darkness, leaving the flames behind. The real fight was just beginning. In the temporary safe house, a converted barn on Nicolette's property, Linnea gently ran her hands over Sable's recovering belly. The German shepherd lay quietly on a thick blanket, her 5 pups nursing contentedly beside her. Morning sunlight streamed through the high windows, illuminating dust motes in golden shafts. Something caught Linnea's trained eye, a slight irregularity in Sable's fur pattern. She parted the black and tan hair carefully, revealing a thin, pale line. Her breath caught. This is older, she murmured, tracing the nearly invisible scar. Much older. The surgical technique was expert level, meant to hide the evidence. But to Linnea's experienced touch, the truth was clear. Someone had operated on Sable months ago, creating false pockets in her uterus. The architecture for smuggling had been put in place long before this pregnancy. Her phone buzzed. The state investigator had sent security footage from the kennel's archives. Linnea clicked play, then called out, "Calder, you need to see this." The deputy crossed the barn in quick strides, his boots scuffing on the wooden floors. His face was drawn with exhaustion after the fire, but his eyes were alert. He leaned over Linnea's shoulder to watch the time-stamped video. The footage showed Captain Hollis moving through the kennel's veterinary areas, speaking intently with men they now knew worked for Merritt. The timestamp was from 6 months ago, right around when that first surgery would have happened. "No," Calder whispered. His shoulders sagged as the truth hit him. "He was my mentor. I trusted him completely." Linnea touched his arm gently. "I'm so sorry, Calder." He shook his head, voice rough. All those times he talked about protecting the unit, about loyalty. He was just protecting the pipeline. This wasn't some one-time thing. They built a whole system. Linnea nodded grimly. "The scar I just found proves it. They've been surgically altering dogs to create hidden compartments, probably timing deliveries with transport routes." She carefully documented the old scar with her phone's camera, adding the images to her growing evidence file. Calder paced the length of the barn, running his hands through his hair. "Everything I believed about him was a lie." He stopped suddenly, turning to face Linnea with determination hardening his features. "We have to bring this forward. All of it. Your career, double quotes Linnea started. "Doesn't matter," he cut in. "Not compared to this." These dogs trusted us. The whole community trusted us. And they used that trust to smuggle drugs. His badge caught the morning light as his chest rose and fell with emotion. I took an oath to protect and serve. It's time I lived up to it, whatever it costs me. Linnea finished logging the new medical evidence, her movements precise and methodical. Every detail had to be perfect. They couldn't risk any procedural mistakes that could compromise the case. Behind her, Calder pulled out his own phone and began recording a formal statement, his voice steady as he detailed everything he'd witnessed. Sable watched them both with wise, gentle eyes, her pups snuffling contentedly at her side. She didn't understand the betrayals being revealed, the careers hanging in the balance. She only knew she was safe now, her babies protected by people who would risk everything to do what was right. The morning light grew stronger, illuminating the truth that could no longer be hidden. What had started as one discovery during an emergency surgery had revealed a corrupt system that reached from kennel to police force to the highest levels of local power. But here in this barn, with evidence mounting and consciences clear, that system's days were numbered. The early morning mist clung to the fields as Linnea's truck wound its way down the narrow dirt road. In the back, safely secured in reinforced carriers, Sable and her 5 pups rested on thick blankets. Nicolette followed in her own vehicle, keeping watch for any signs of pursuit. The new location was perfect, a renovated barn on the outskirts of town, owned by one of Nicolette's trusted friends who raised therapy horses. The structure had been recently modernized with climate control and security systems. Most importantly, it was well off the main roads and had multiple escape routes. The surveillance is already set up, Calder explained as they carefully transferred the carriers inside. He pointed to discrete cameras positioned at key points around the perimeter. Motion sensors, too. Nothing moves out here without us knowing. Linnea nodded, focusing on getting her patients settled. The main area had been converted into a comfortable recovery space, with fresh straw and warm bedding. Sable seemed to approve, sniffing carefully before allowing her pups to settle in. "I've made copies of everything," Linnea said, pulling out a thick folder. Medical records, surgery notes, photos, test results, all backed up to 3 different secure locations, plus physical copies going to 2 independent labs for verification. "Smart," Nicolette commented, helping to arrange medical supplies on a nearby table. "They can't burn all the evidence if it's spread out." As they worked to organize the space, Calder shared his developing plan. "We need to draw them out," he explained. "Make them think they have a chance to cover their tracks. That's when they'll make mistakes." Linnea looked up from checking Sable's stitches. "What are you suggesting?" "A sting operation. We stage a transfer of the pups, make it look like we're moving them to a different facility. Leak just enough information to bait Merritt's people." Calder's face was serious. "It's risky, but it might be our best chance to catch them in the act." They gathered around a folding table, spreading out maps and timeline documents. Nicolette marked potential surveillance points, while Calder listed the few state troopers he absolutely trusted to be involved. "The fewer people who know, the better," he insisted. "We've already seen how deep this goes." Linnea focused on the medical aspects, calculating exactly when the pups would be strong enough to handle a brief supervised transport. "They'll need at least 2 more weeks," she determined. "That gives us time to plan everything perfectly." Over the next several days, they refined their strategy. Calder scripted the communications that would be intercepted, just enough detail to seem legitimate, while hiding their true intentions. Nicolette mapped out multiple backup routes and safe houses. Linnea documented every aspect of the pups' care, building an ironclad chain of evidence. During quiet moments between planning sessions, Linnea noticed a subtle shift in her dynamic with Calder. The initial tension of distrust had evolved into something steadier. They moved around each other with comfortable familiarity, anticipating needs and sharing unspoken concerns. One evening, as they sat reviewing surveillance footage, Calder spoke softly. "I keep thinking about how close we came to losing everything in that fire." Linnea glanced at him, seeing the weight of recent events in his tired eyes. "But we didn't. We're still here, still fighting. Thanks to you," he said simply. "Your courage in standing up to Hollis. It made me see things clearly for the first time." She shook her head. "We're in this together now. That's what matters." The trust between them wasn't romantic. There was too much at stake for that. But it was something equally valuable. A foundation of mutual respect and shared purpose, forged in crisis. By the end of the week, their plan was set. They had arranged for trusted officers to be coincidentally positioned along the transfer route. Cameras and recording devices were tested and in place. Every detail was documented and every contingency considered. "Tomorrow we start leaking the transfer plans," Calder announced during their final strategy session. "Small details at first, through channels we know they're watching." Linnea looked around at their small team, then at Sable and her sleeping pups. "We have to get this right," she said firmly. "These animals have already been through too much. Whatever happens, their safety comes first." The others nodded in agreement. The stakes were clear. One chance to expose a corrupt network, protect innocent animals, and bring justice to those who had betrayed their badges. The quiet barn, filled with the soft sounds of sleeping puppies, felt like the calm before a storm. Dawn broke over the Riverside truck depot, casting long shadows across the empty lot. Linnea sat in her parked vehicle with Sable safely secured in the back, her heart pounding as she watched the operation unfold through her windshield. The German Shepherd remained remarkably calm, as if sensing the importance of staying quiet. From her vantage point, Linnea observed 3 of Merritt's trucks rolling into the depot, their drivers unaware of the trap about to spring. The moment they began backing up to the loading docks, unmarked police vehicles emerged from their hidden positions, blocking all possible escape routes. "Units moving in," crackled Calder's voice through her secure radio. "Stay put." Everything happened with precise coordination. Officers swarmed the area, weapons drawn. "Police, hands where we can see them." The shouts echoed across the concrete yard. Merritt's men, caught completely off guard, surrendered without resistance. As the suspects were being cuffed and read their rights, evidence teams descended on the trucks. They pulled out ledgers, stacks of burner phones, and documentation that mapped out the entire operation's infrastructure. Through her binoculars, Linnea watched the state investigator methodically cataloging each piece of evidence, placing items in labeled bags. The investigator's thoroughness gave her hope. This time, nothing would be overlooked or buried. Calder approached her vehicle about an hour into the operation, his face showing visible relief. "We got them," he said through her open window. "Multiple arrests, seized assets, documented evidence, everything we needed. It almost seems too easy," Linnea replied, reaching back to scratch behind Sable's ears. "What about the inside players? The ones who made this all possible?" "One step at a time," Calder assured her, though she could see the same concern in his eyes. They both knew that while this bust had decapitated the visible operation, the true architect of the scheme, the one operating from within the unit itself, had yet to reveal their hand. The morning sun climbed higher as the investigation teams continued their work, methodically dismantling what appeared to be a major victory. But Linnea couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Morning's fragile peace shattered in an instant. Captain Hollis emerged from the shadows at the depot's edge, his service weapon raised and steady. His cold eyes locked onto the evidence team. "The drive, now." His voice carried the steel of command, but underneath lay desperation. Agent Cooper's team froze, hands hovering over their weapons. The standoff crackled with tension as Hollis kept his gun trained on them, particularly focusing on the evidence bags. Suddenly, a loud metallic screech cut through the air. A heavy hauler truck, its brakes failing, began rolling down the loading ramp. Time seemed to slow as several chemical drums broke loose, crashing and rupturing. The acrid smell of industrial chemicals filled the air seconds before the fumes found an ignition source. With a whoosh, flames erupted, racing along the spilled chemicals toward the riverbank. The fire spread with frightening speed, cutting off escape routes and sending thick black smoke billowing into the morning sky. In the chaos, Sable broke free from her restraints and bolted toward one of the idling truck cabs, perhaps seeking familiar shelter in her panic. Linnea's heart stopped as she saw the flames approach in the vehicle. "Take them!" she shouted, shoving the carrier with Sable's pups into Calder's arms. Before he could protest, she sprinted into the thickening smoke. Heat pressed against her like a physical wall as she reached the truck. Sable whimpered inside, trapped by her lead which had tangled around the seat frame. Linnea pulled out her medical scissors, slicing through the lid with shaking hands as the temperature around them soared. The leather parted with a snap and she grabbed Sable's collar, pulling the dog toward the door. "Move!" she screamed, pushing Sable ahead of her. They leaped clear of the truck just as the flames reached it. The explosion threw them forward, debris and burning embers raining down over the dark river water. Through the chaos, Linnea spotted Hollis trying to use the confusion to slip away, using the wall of flames as cover. But the state troopers had anticipated this. They tightened their perimeter, cutting off his escape routes one by one. Despite the smoke and fire, they maintained their positions, determined not to let him slip through their net. Through the smoke and chaos, orange flames danced on the river's dark surface as Captain Hollis raised his weapon once more, targeting Linnea with deadly intent. In that crucial moment, Calder moved with purpose, stepping directly into the line of fire. "It's done, Captain," he said firmly, his voice carrying both authority and regret. With swift, practiced movements, Calder disarmed his former mentor, the metallic click of handcuffs echoing across the water. A commotion drew their attention downstream where state police boats intercepted Silas Merritt's attempted escape. The trucking magnate had tried slipping away on a speedboat during the chaos, but spotlights caught him against the shoreline. In the days that followed, the evidence mounted inexorably. Lab reports confirmed the surgical modifications to multiple dogs. Kennel records revealed a pattern of illegal operations spanning years. Bank transfers tied everything back to Merritt's companies and Hollis's offshore accounts. The federal prosecutor didn't hesitate. Both Hollis and Merritt faced substantial prison terms for drug trafficking, animal cruelty, and corruption. Their sentencing made headlines across the state. Unable to continue serving in a unit tainted by corruption, Calder submitted his resignation. Within weeks, he accepted a position with the state task force dedicated to dismantling similar trafficking operations. His experience made him invaluable in cleaning up the remaining threads of the ring. The veterinary board not only cleared Linnea's license but commended her courage in a public statement. Her actions had exposed a criminal enterprise and saved countless animals from abuse. The recognition meant less to her than the quiet victory of adopting Sable, and her pups officially. The rebuilt clinic rose from the ashes, modern and warm, with a special wing for rehabilitating rescued animals. On opening day, Calder appeared, not seeking favors or looking back, but moving forward with honesty and purpose. "I needed to tell you something," he said, watching Sable play with her growing pups in the sunny exercise yard. "What you did, standing up for what's right no matter the cost, it changed everything. Not just the case, but me." Linnea studied him for a long moment before smiling. "We both did what needed doing. And now? Now we build something better," he replied. "If you'll have me," she reached for his hand. Their shared experience of risk and trust creating a foundation stronger than words. Together, they'd forged a future defined by protecting what mattered most: justice, compassion, and the quiet strength found in doing what's right. Thank you for watching. Stories like this remind us who we are. If something touched your heart, go ahead and subscribe. I'll be back tomorrow with another story that just might stay with you.